So I'm Sharon Livingston, and my talk is called Every Company Has a Story, and we're going to help you figure out yours. Um, okay, and so to move the slide, let's see, there we go. So one of the most important things that you need to do is to take control of your story, or other people will do it for you. That is one of the things I've learned over 25 years of working with large Fortune 100 corporations to help them understand how they are seen and what their story is. And all of you, I'm sure, know Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and he has a famous saying that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And that's why it's so important to help them know how you want to be seen. So behind every brand, and your company is a brand, whether you intended it to be or not, there is a story. And stories start from different places. The story might be how you came into being. The story might be how you have interacted with your clients and your customers and your other people in your company portfolio. But there is a story. And the story can change, and it's a very good idea to know who the story is from the point of view of all the people in your organization, as well as those who interact with you. So what we'll be discussing today are several elements of your company and stories. And number one, we're going to talk about why our story is important, why your company needs to have a story, which we're beginning to talk about. I'm going to give you some examples of powerful brand stories. And we're going to be talking about your brand as the main character in the story, the hero. And we talk about that as a brand archetype. And archetypes are important, and we'll explain why. And once you know your archetype, you can build your story readily around that character. And then we're going to be talking about how you discover your brand personality and the elements of your story so you can put it all together. So let's talk about story itself. We know about stories because stories are things that have been handed down for years and years and years, since we were able to talk. And it's how we educated each other. Before we had books, books are only around for a few centuries, but we have been passing down information through story. And we tell stories every day. We come home to our families and tell them about something that happened. We talk about it with texture and with emotion, and it creates a reaction that helps people know about our lives. So we have this idea that people buy brands. They buy brands, yes, but they buy a product that the brand represents. But in our world, there are so many different types of the same product that in order for people to make a decision, they have to have a connection, an attachment to that product, and they do it through the story about the brand, through the emotional connection. So think about it. When you were in school and you were learning history and you were learning facts, it was so hard, wasn't it? The dates, the names, exactly what happened and who was there at what point. But when you hear a story and there is excitement about it and, some emotion that is brought up through the story, we remember it. And I know this really well myself. Let me stop and let you translate, and then I'll continue. So I was always a good student, no matter what the topic was. I was lucky that way, and I got A's in high school. But I hated history. I just hated history. I hated having to memorize facts and figures and dates. And then I got into college, and I took a course in world history. I had a teacher who loved telling the stories of history. One of the stories that he told was about one of the Louis and how he created his aristocracy with big rituals so they would not be able to think about anything but following his rules and not revolting. One of the things that he did, they had all of these little rituals they had to do, but one of them was they were not allowed to knock on the door. So what they had to do if they wanted to enter is they grew their pinky nail very long and they would scratch at the door. And that's what I remembered. I remembered the story, and I got history through the story, which I never got before. And so stories, because they're emotional, because they have all these different flavors and feelings and pictures that we create, they stick. The facts do not. But you make the facts stick by embedding them in a story. A number of years ago, a writer, Daniel Kahneman, wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and he's a very famous researcher. What he discovered through a lot of research was that 90% of decisions are made emotionally, but then what we do is we rationalize with logic. And I'll give you an example of that with in the medical field. Oncologists and gynecologists deal with breast cancer, and there are two major brands that are there to prevent further incidents. The two brands are virtually identical, and the difference, however, is in the way that they are marketed. One of them looks like a warrior. The other one looks like a gentle, caring mother. What's interesting about that is that there are two types of doctors. There's the doctor with a wonderful bedside manner, and then there's the doctor who is, hard and hit it hard and get it done. The doctors who had the softer side always chose the softer brand. The doctors who were the hard-hitting, no-nonsense picked the harder brand. And this was despite the fact they told you they did not. The result of this was that the softer brand, Femara, stopped trying to sell itself as a hard-hitting brand and emphasized the softness, and their sales went up. So, and let me tell you one other story like this, which I think you might find interesting. Yeah. So here's the other story. I was doing research on mouthwash, and there was a company, Bausch & Lomb, that wanted to come out with a new mouthwash that was alcohol-free. They knew they had to compete on taste. They wanted to test their product against the major leaders. And so we spoke with two different basic groups of people, those who liked scope and those who liked Listermint. And so with Listermint, which was the sweet flavor of mouthwash, Listerine is the yellow one that is kind of bitter. And so they spoke to scope users in a group of them, and they spoke to Listermint users in a group of them. They were separate. When they gave the scope users a cup of scope and a cup of the new product that didn't have a name yet, it was called Clear Choice, go ahead. The scope users spit out the scope. They said it was disgusting. Now, this was without a name. When it did not have its name, they thought it tasted awful. Later in the group, they were given these two products again, the scope and the Clear Choice, but this time they had their names on it. And the scope people said, "Oh my goodness, this is my scope. It's wonderful." And so the power of the name and the story behind the name actually altered the way they tasted the product. So that was one of the most powerful demonstrations of the power of how we see something in the story behind it. Scope made them feel good. They could greet their loved ones in the morning and feel confident. But without the name, it tasted awful. I'm trying to change the slide. What did I do? I did something wrong. So what the brand story does is it allows people to identify with your product, with your brand, trust and care about it. It's the know, like, and trust. And Steve Jobs, from the former chairman and co-founder of Apple, says, and he's correct about this, that what a brand does is it creates trust. And once you trust something, you attach to it and you stay with it. So here are some powerful brands that have stories, and I'm going to tell you the stories of each of them. So Nike is the sneaker, Ray-Ban or sunglasses, and Band-Aid is the bandage that we put on our boo-boos. So Nike was created by its founder, who created a sole that had better traction. And the hero in the Nike story is both the shoe itself and the user who identifies with that sneaker. And the swoosh, the Nike swoosh, is the wing of the goddess of victory. Nike is the goddess of victory, and the Nike story is one of achievement. And that Nike is the only brand of sneakers that people really know. When you ask people for brands of sneakers, unless they bought one recently that they're using, they can't think of any other brand but Nike. Nike owns the sneaker market. You may have seen this commercial. I'm not sure. This is for Band-Aid. There's a little girl singing, "I am stuck on Band-Aid brand clothes, Band-Aid stuck on me." This commercial, which has run for many years, I think they've just recently changed it, was based on research that we did all around the world at two different times, 25 years ago when I first started, and then more recently, a few years ago. And it came out of its origin story, the way the Band-Aid was first developed, but also the stories that real-life people tell about Band-Aid. When Band-Aids were first developed many years ago, the man who created it was in the kitchen with his wife. She cut her finger very badly, and he went running around the house trying to figure out how to help her. And what he did was he created a makeshift Band-Aid. It was a little gauze pad and some tape, which never had been made before. It worked so well, protecting her hand so she could go back to doing what she needed to do, that he brought it to the people in his research department. And so in this story, Band-Aid as a hero is a protector. And the user, the character of the user is the nurturer, the mother. So unlike Nike, where the user and the brand have the same brand character, Band-Aid is the protector or the father, and the user is a frantic mother who was calmed and able to take care of her child because Band-Aid protects. And then I want to tell you a third story about Ray-Ban. And this was a large-scale research project understanding why people wear sunglasses. So it seems normal that you wear sunglasses to protect your eyes from glaring light. But what Ray-Ban believed back then was that their sunglasses were a fashion statement. The research showed a number of things. Among them is that teenagers make a commitment to a brand at that point in their lives. So it's important to make a connection with them because they will stay with your brand for the rest of their lives. So you created a 40, 50, 60-year relationship. What we learned in the research is that a very important reason for wearing their sunglasses was that the eyes are the window of the soul. And lots of times they did not want people to know what was on their mind. So the sunglasses protected them and transformed them if they were feeling angry, if they were feeling nervous, if they were feeling romantic. And they didn't want to show that. The sunglasses shielded them as a very good protector and wizard and transformed them into cool. Ray-Ban took this understanding and created a very powerful and successful commercial about vampires. If you go to YouTube and look up Vampire Ray-Ban, you'll see the commercial. The way the commercial starts, there's a jaunty fellow walking down a kind of Riviera type community in very, very, very early in the morning before dawn. He greets a bunch of people sitting on stairs right by the beach. The sun is beginning to come up, and as it does, the group of people pull out their Ray-Bans and put them on. He reaches into his pocket, but he can't find his sunglasses. And as the sunlight hits him, he bursts into flame and disappears. And one of the characters says, "Somebody forgot his Ray-Bans," which he smiles and we see all of them have vampire teeth. So what Ray-Ban did was connect a powerful brand quality, glare protection, with the feelings about being exposed. And if you can protect a vampire, you can protect a kid. So what Ray-Ban is to people is a wizard that transforms you from being overheated and afraid of your feelings to being very cool. It's the wizard of cool. So let me continue here. So what I'm talking about today in terms of brand archetypes, what your brand personality is based on what we know about instinct. Go ahead, I'm sorry. We have instinctual reactions to different things, like a snake. When you see a snake, we all recoil. It's a natural instinct. It just happens. There are many different heroes or archetypes that we have the same reaction to all around the world. Whenever there is a character who is mother, everyone in the world knows what a mother is. Everyone in the world knows what a monster is. Everyone knows what a magician is. These are hardwired. They're the character, the main character in the story that we all know, and so it's easy to wrap a story around that character. After many years of a lot of research and trying to understand what these story starters, these archetypes are, most people in the marketing arena have agreed on 12 basic archetypes. And when you know what that archetype is for your particular brand, you know a lot of elements of the story that you can tell people. So for example, the major character in the Nike story is the warrior. The brand is a warrior and the user is a warrior. Go ahead. Ray-Ban is a magician because it transforms the frightened user into a powerful, cool person. Band-Aid is a combination of the warrior and the nurturer, making it a protector. And Apple is a creative rebel. And Coca-Cola, that helps you feel through its bubbly personality that everything is possible, is the innocent. Oh, where'd it go? Try again. Not showing for, oh, here we go. So as I mentioned, there are 12 basic archetypes and they have different characteristics. And on these 2 pages, I give you the details of the 12 for some different brands to make it more easily recognizable. And I just see here the emotional value is not showing up. It should be in black. So very often we understand a story based on what the major character in the story wants. And then we can modify that with the different attributes that are attached to that character. Let me just see something here for a second. Yeah, let's use this one because this one has the last column in black. Okay. So for example, General Electric, GE, what they want to do, they're the creator. They want to bring an idea into reality. And their characteristics are creative, artistic, unique, vision, thinking outside the box. And that goes very well with their brand message, which is we bring good things to life. And what they value emotionally is creativity. That's what they feel most proud of, is their creativity. Now look at that in contrast to a rebel brand like Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And what they want to do is shake things up. So they're about change, they're counterculture. If it ain't broke, break it. Their brand message is American by birth, rebel by choice. And what they value is their independence and being respected. So you can read about these, and I have an article that I sent that you can share. The other thing about your brand story is that your brand, because of these brand archetypes, becomes a badge. When you are using that brand, you're wearing it as a badge that people can identify you through the brand. And so for example, with Nike, you're a warrior. With Apple, you're this creative rebel. With IKEA, you're a regular guy. With Harley Davidson, you are, a strong rebel. With Coca-Cola, you're an innocent. But how do you find your story? that you're going to have lots of information looking at this and looking at the different characteristics. How do you find your story? Well, the first thing you want to do is to interview your management team. So you take a look at all the adjectives that we have for these different characters and the values attached to them, and have your team members rate your brand on every attribute. So for example, you could use a 1 to 10 scale where a 10 is that fits my brand perfectly, a 1 not at all. And they can use any number from 1 to 10. When you look at these together, you're going to start seeing a pattern. And so you also want to identify your customers and prospects and talk to them as well. You want to take them through the exact same exercise with the different words. The thing that you also would want to do is show your customers and prospects the different brand archetypes and ask them to choose the one they think fits best. I use a deck that I created myself of 159 cards that are different flavors of those basic 12. And so there are a lot of variations that they can choose. And then you want to have them choose one for themselves as user, because then you'll get the user with its problem and the brand as a solution. So I want to give you just a very short case study. I was working for a company that was creating a new antibiotic drop for eyes. They understood the value of the brand story and the archetype. So part of the research we were doing was showing brand concepts and asking people, the doctors, how well they were meeting their needs using that 1 to 10 scale. What they also were asked to do was to pick an archetype card that they thought fit with each concept. At the end of the first round, and there was only supposed to be one round, none of the concepts got more than a 6. Research shows that you have to get at least an 8 out of 10 to be successful. All of the concepts they showed were given the visionary archetype. When in the next phase, when the advertising agency came back, this was their improved concept. It only got a 6. The advertising agency said, listen, we have one more. It's a bit different. Can we show it? So this is what we showed. So I don't know how it translates in Russian, but when you say drop dead in the United States, it's like a big insult, but it's very powerful. And this concept was attached to the archetype of conqueror. So doctors needed a conqueror. They didn't care about a visionary. They needed something that was going to kill those germs so they could protect their patient's eyesight. So while the concept of a visionary was tempting because the company was about vision, it really was not what the doctors wanted. And the archetypal research helped identify what they needed. So I think I went a little bit longer than I should have, and I'm sorry. What questions might you have? I'm happy to talk to you about it, and I should put my contact information somewhere. Please feel free to email me with any questions you might have.